we have some of the dirtiest electricity in the EU.
We have a higher percentage of gas that generates electricity in Ireland than most other countries. And gas, although people think it's clean, it's half as dirty as coal and maybe 3/4 as dirty as oil. If we think it's difficult doing nuclear, it's far more difficult to try and decarbonise without nuclear.
We're paying a huge amount of fines, aren't we, for not hitting our carbon targets? It's costing us a fortune.
That's 26 billion, 10 children's hospitals. Actually, there is a solution for the nuclear waste. And then we started thinking, well, what about the other issues? We could think of other negative issues and say, well, actually, that's been solved as well, and that's been solved as well. And almost everything I had assumed about nuclear energy I found was not true. Or was not true to the extent that was significant. Look, nuclear doesn't solve everything, but we can't solve the problems we have without it.
So let's talk about Denis Duff.
Okie doke, let's go.
So what is your personal mission, right? I'm looking at my notes here, and I took this from, I think, your LinkedIn. You're committed to reliable, clean and affordable energy at a profit. That's a real pithy little sentence. Tell me about this.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where the profit bit came in, but certainly as an engineer I've always been interested in how things work and trying to make things better and help people go the way. And then when children came along, I started imagining what my life was going to be like and what their life was going to be like. And I realised that that energy and the amount of energy that you use determines how well you're going to live and how long you're going to live as a nation. So there's a certain correlation back to the people then as well. You know, so what do you want from your children? You want them to be happy and healthy, but I'd also like them to be at home if I possibly can. So I realised that the way our energy system is going, which drives the whole economy, is not going to be able to provide them with the proper industrial opportunities and economic opportunities that I think that I would envisage for them. So I said, well, let's have a look at that. And that's where the need for affordable, reliable and clean electricity came from.
And what's your background? You're an engineer. Tell me about your background, your career.
Yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer. I used to work with my dad at a bike shop. And so I got to know the bicycles and then went into motorbikes and servicing the bikes in the shop. Now, I was only 40 and 15 years of age, but still do all that. So went into engineering and then joined ESB Power Generation in 1980 and stayed there pretty much. ESB is a great company, so you get to see a lot of different areas. Every department you work in is like working for a different company. So I stayed there till 2013. And then ever since then, I've been working independently as a consultant, both at home and abroad, from simple things like supervising classes, delivering classes on how to design and build a power station, to then going and advising nations as regards how to organise their electricity system so that it's going to provide affordable, reliable and clean electricity.
What nations do you advise? Can you tell us? Is that a secret?
Yeah, well, there's been a couple of them. I suppose Ghana is one and the Gambia was the last project I was involved in.
So what did you advise the Gambia?
Well, it was about all kinds of things. It wasn't just to advise them on how to construct their power generation portfolio, right? So they get reliable electricity, because that's the one thing to need. If it's expensive, that's bad. If it's not reliable, that's much worse. So how to do that, but then also how to maintain the equipment and how to operate it. So then it was from the high level stuff about how you bid for energy into the market, how you set up a grid code, how you dispatch the energy, but also then training, and I wrote actual training courses and operating manuals for the staff as regards how to run the plant, because they tended not to do that terribly well.
You've been retired, you've been consulting, you've been helping nations to power up. Yeah, produce reliable power for themselves so that they can develop maybe underdeveloped countries or developing countries. So tell me about 18 for Zero then. How did that happen?
Yes, 18 for Zero happened because I met a number of people who are also interested in this topic. Energy researchers, energy systems engineers, medical physicists, medical doctors, nuclear physicists, who realised that Ireland's policy at the time was to not even look at nuclear energy. So they didn't know whether nuclear would be a good idea or not.
When was this? What year was this?
Well, I suppose it's been ever since the Carnsore Point debacle, I suppose, back in 1980. And then there was a law passed in 1999 to say that to put nuclear against the law in Ireland. We can import it all right, but you just can't put it in Ireland. And
typical Irish solution to an Irish problem.
Well, it actually wasn't a solution.
Yeah.
It was kind of hoping. I think we're talking about something else earlier. The kind of it's a problem. We say let's just put that to one side. Let's not solve that problem. That's too hard.
Yeah.
You know, but then we realised that in the studies that we did, and we did like, I would model the Ireland's electricity system, right, to see how it's going, all the different power stations in it, and kind of project that out to 2050, and I could see where it was going. It wasn't going to a good place. It wasn't going to hit the targets that people said was their objective. Right. So I said, well, what would happen if you put a certain amount of nuclear into that component? And I found that, we found that yes, you could hit the targets that you said were your targets, and you could do it quicker than by excluding nuclear, for less cost, with less materials, less land use, and altogether better, more reliable electricity. So we came together to see, could we get Ireland to start considering nuclear?
Right, so let's go back over those adjectives again. So it was cleaner, it required less resources, it required less infrastructure, less land, less investment, less time. Yeah?
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
They're the different inputs.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was off the table because of this law, the clause 18.6F in the 1999 Electricity Regulation Act.
Yes.
Yes.
18.6.
18 for zero, first of all, 18 for zero is here to open up the conversation, to bring the conversation to the relevant tables.
Yes.
Have you done that?
Well, interesting. Just to go back a little bit, 18 for zero, where the name actually comes from.
Yes.
Yes, we found that the Climate Action Plan 2019 came out, and it decided that they were going to have 70% of our electricity was going to be from renewables by 2030. So we knew that nuclear couldn't be in by 2030 because it'll take about 10 years to put a nuclear program in. But we said, what happens if you put nuclear in after that? And we found that there's a Goldilocks amount of nuclear, not too much, not too little. And we found that if nuclear was able to generate 18% of our electricity, say by 2040, that would be the quickest way to get to zero emissions electricity. It would also use the least amount of land, the least amount of materials, and would actually lower the final cost of electricity to the customer. Despite the fact that nuclear, everyone knows that nuclear is expensive, but they don't mention that the other systems are expensive as well. And it's not about how much a system costs, really. It's about how much does your electricity cost after you put all that infrastructure in. And that's the bit that's missing. People are just looking at the cost and not the value. So we said, let's look at the value. And that's where 18
spoken like a true marketing person. Really? People are looking at the cost and not the value. Okay. I love that.
Okay, well,
I'm going to start saying that.
That's engineer speak. So that's the way I rock.
Yeah.
We just have a look. We don't stick to just engineering because...
What are the outcomes? And how do we measure that?
Yeah. Look, clean energy isn't a technical problem. It's technical, it's political, it's social, it's financial,
it's emotional.
Economic, it's emotional.
Yeah.
And, you know, it can be rational, it can be irrational.
Yes.
It's a brilliant topic, I must say.
It's a brilliant topic, yeah. Okay, so that's 18 for zero. Did you set that, you were part of the people who founded that, in 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, and your mandate was to bring the conversation about nuclear, knowing what you know, to the table.
Yes.
Have you done that?
Well, yeah, our objective was to have nuclear energy considered in Ireland.
That was it, yeah.
And I believe that nuclear energy is being considered in Ireland this year for the first time. Well, actually, from the end of 2025. EirGrid is the company that operates the grid, a very good company, and they're starting to look at nuclear. I think because their previous plans found it really, really hard to get to net zero without nuclear. I re-engineered their Tomorrow's Energy Scenario study to see what it actually meant when they said net zero. And some of the findings that I had now, I've not been able to verify these with EirGrid, I haven't actually tried, found extraordinary assumptions that had to be used by me to get their system to work.
Right.
Okay, so the other
assumptions.
Well, look, they could be valid, but say an assumption that I found, that we'll have interconnectors, we'll have more interconnectors than we have today. But those interconnectors would be used to import electricity on average for 52% of their maximum capacity throughout the whole year, right? Now we're told, of course, that we're a very windy country and we're going to be exporting, but we will be exporting a little bit, but we'll be importing far more electricity. So this is not an economic opportunity that it's often described as. It could well be an industrial opportunity, but at horrendous economic cost. That's air grid. SEAI is the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. So they've recently undertaken a study on decarbonised electricity systems. And they're including nuclear in that, I know that, which is great. Not saying nuclear has to be part of the answer, but I really can't see how we can achieve our objectives without it.
Okay, so let's talk about this 1999 Electricity Regulation Act.
Yes.
So you sent me the direct excerpt from the Act. An order under this section shall not provide for the use of nuclear fission for the generation of electricity. Nothing in this Act shall be construed as enabling the authorisation of development consisting of an installation for the generation of electricity by nuclear fission.
Yes.
So fission and fusion.
Okay.
You're going to have to explain this to me like I'm 5 years old.
Well, look, it's something that kind of confuses many people, the difference between fusion and fission. And how I tend to remember it is that I know that fusion is a smaller word than fission. But it also, when you're using fusion, you use lighter elements, the smallest elements known to man. You're talking about hydrogen, helium, lithium. And you join those two together, you fuse them together. And when you do that, there's energy released. And you can use that energy to make electricity or to generate heat for industrial processes. Fission, on the other hand, the bigger word and the bigger elements is where you separate those elements out. And these are the biggest elements known to occur on Earth, like uranium, plutonium, thorium, big heavy elements, each of them. And they separate out into smaller elements. And in doing so, they also release energy, which can be used for heat and electricity.
So we can't do fission because of this law. This law is the blocker. In your calculations and in the conversations that 18 for Zero are having, are you talking about fission or fusion?
Fission, because we're practical. We want to solve the problem. We want to start solving the problem, say by 2037, 2040, start making real progress here. And I don't believe you would have a commercial fusion plant in place by 2040 anywhere in the world.
Right.
So fission, is it good enough? Can it do what we say we want to do? Yes, absolutely. So let's stick the art of the possible, and fission is definitely possible. And what they've done now is as well, they've made nuclear plants small enough that they can be the perfect size for Ireland.
Right. And did we ever have nuclear plants in Ireland?
Oh God, no.
Never.
No. You see, nuclear really only came about in 1956. Nuclear as a power generation medium. At the time, Ireland we had peat, and we had hydro.
Yeah.
We had a small bit of oil, I suppose. But it was
and we hadn't discovered our natural gas.
No, that came about during the Carnsore Point protests, right. I suppose. So, ESB at the time, the electricity system was supplied by ESB, but ESB did everything. They ran the power generation. They looked at what the demand profile was going to be like in a few years. They put in enough generation to meet that demand, and they put in the overhead transmission lines to be able to get the power from the generating stations to the people. So they saw that the demand was going to increase to such an extent that we would need a lot more power generation, because it was in the boom of the 60s was on, the boom of the 70s was on, and they thought that was going to continue as it would until something changes. If you want to know whether a country is doing well or not, have a look at the electricity demand. Is it growing?
Yes.
Stopped or falling?
Yes.
And at the time they could see that electricity demand was increasing to such an extent that we would have had to put in lots more new generation plant, and that was all going to be oil because there wasn't any alternative.
And where were we getting the oil from?
Well, from the countries that caused the 1973 and 1979 oil crises, right? So oil wasn't, you needed to diversify.
So OPEC.
Yeah. So, I mean, thankfully OPEC was there to be able to supply the energy to drive the economy, to improve our lifestyles. Yeah. Right. So this isn't all bad, but it has a negative consequence with the emissions. Gas came along, which is about half the emissions of coal, about 3/4 the emissions of oil. So it's cleaner, but it's not clean. And for ESB wanted to diversify. away from, they knew the peat was kind of limited, the hydro was limited, so they didn't want to go just oil and be stuck with a dependence on foreign nations for a particular product, when they mightn't necessarily have been able to guarantee the availability of that product, of the oil. So when the gas came, they were looking at nuclear, and then when the gas came along, they said, you know what, we can go gas, and we don't need to put in the nuclear, particularly if you put a coal plant into Money Point. And that's what decided. We decided not to go with nuclear at Carnsore, but to put coal into Money Point instead.
The Carnsore Point was a protest.
Yeah.
It was a protest. And you were there. But you weren't protesting.
It was a great protest.
You were there for the crack.
It was our Woodstock. It was Ireland's first Woodstock. I was there for the crack. Right? The first time we ever had muesli, we saw these huge big wigwams with maybe 20 people living in them and a fire in the middle, and the smoke and get out and communal. They were hippies.
Yeah.
I said, this is hate Ashby's Ireland.
Yeah.
Hate Ashby. No, they were more British and German. There might have been a few Irish in them. But it was a great festival. The music was brilliant. Christa Berg and Christy Moore, and it was just brilliant.
Christa Berg was there.
Yeah. Singing Blackbird, singing at the dead of night, a cappella, just wonderful stuff.
He's a great musician.
He's a great musician.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful. And then what happened? On the Sunday, see, Petra Kelly was one of the main organisers of this, and she was the one that went on to form the German Greens.
Right.
And she was one of the main drivers of it. And I think it was her partner at the time that encouraged everybody on the Sunday to go down. We're at Cairn. Cairn Beach was just there.
Yeah.
Let's build a cairn at Cairn, and we'll all bring a stone down for all the people who died at Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the nuclear bombs in 1945. And I said, what's that got to do with nuclear energy? So I didn't bring the stone down.
Okay, so this is an interesting, we spoke about this before, you and I. Now we will stay on track, right? So we're talking about Carnsore and how that resulted in coal in Money Point, right? So we've done that. I remember being in school in the 80s, and the word nuclear, there was CND, Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, that was all wrapped up, all caught up in the collective consciousness of Irish people, that they were all the same.
But if you think about it, and this is the hard part. Asking people to think about it can be sometimes difficult because they don't have enough information to think properly about it. Once they're given the information, of course they can see it. And if you take a country like North Korea, two countries separated after the Second World War, North Korea and South Korea. Now, South Korea has lots of nuclear energy, and they're really good nuclear power plant construction organisations in South Korea, but they don't have any nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. North Korea, on the other hand, doesn't have any nuclear power stations, but has nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. So the two industries are entirely separate. It's the same element of uranium and plutonium, but it's in entirely different concentrations. The weapon has to have really high concentrations, and the power stations can't operate on those concentrations. They have to operate on much lower, very dilute concentrations. You're talking 4% kind of, as distinct from 95% on the other side. And it's really difficult to purify the uranium, and people can tell what the countries are doing, which is the Iranian situation. They said they're making uranium for power stations, but the enrichment they were going to tended to let people know that actually they were probably on the way to making a bomb. That's what it looked like. Because the power stations didn't need uranium at that enrichment.
Concentration, yeah.
So there's an international program, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and others, the European Union, has programs to check all the concentration factories where they purify the uranium and increases its purity.
So that's tracking whether there's a potential for it to move from energy creation into arms creation.
And at the end of the day, Tiffany, if you look at it, if Ireland had a nuclear power plant, a nuclear power program, nuclear energy program, how likely would we be to start manufacturing nuclear weapons? I don't think so.
In Ireland?
In Ireland, no. We don't have an interest in doing that. We were one of the initial signatories of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty back in 1968, along with Finland. And we decided to be anti-nuclear, I suppose, but in all nuclear things. And it's a kind of common conflation. Finland, the other co-signatory, decided that they would be against weapons but would go with the nuclear energy. Mm-hmm. And now Finland gets about a third of their electricity from nuclear and another third from renewables. And their emissions are lower than ours, and their electricity is about a third of the cost of ours. So this is it's the cost of making wrong decisions based on perhaps poor information. I'm not sure what to...
Why do we not have more engineers in the government?
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a tough job. Being a politician is a tough job.
Yeah.
What you should have happen is that you'd have an engineer and technical people, and you have the social, and get a group of people together and say, what is the best way to do it? And maybe give a range of solutions to a particular problem. And then it's up to the politicians to choose which of the range they like, and see can they persuade enough people to go along, to vote for it, and then implement it. And it's really difficult. Different skill sets.
You have spent decades in ESB.
Yes.
Peat, gas, oil, hydro. A portfolio of different sources of energy. You started in ESB in 1980, you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
But everything's changed. The mix of fuels that we use in Ireland completely changed. From peat, hydro, a little bit of oil. Now we get 40% from wind and a small growing percentage from solar. Money Point is gone now. It's closed up. Most of the heavy fuel oil plants are closed. We have some light oil, distillate, kerosene kind of stuff. They're kind of running gas turbines, and then we've got a lot of gas. So now we get 45% of our electricity from gas. Back in 1980, we had no interconnectors. We were an island nation, and the interconnector to Northern Ireland kept on failing for another reason back in the 60s and 70s. And we had no interconnector to Britain. So now we have 3 interconnectors to Britain and 1 interconnector to Northern Ireland, and we're building another one to France. Going in 2 years' time. Yeah. So we actually get about 16% of our electricity from abroad at the moment. On the interconnector. So that's completely new. The mix has changed. Money Point, come and gone. In thinking about that, at the time ESB was a vertically integrated utility, and it did everything. Decided, could see where the demand was going, put in the generation, put in the transmission, put in the distribution, and that kind of stuff. So the market then, the single electricity market came in 2007. And to facilitate that, they needed to have a market arrangement so they could trade with our neighbours. So that's where the single electricity market came in. So now what generation we have and where it is determined by the politicians rather than by the technical people. Now they do it based on the technical studies, but they don't always follow the technical studies. And our last minister, in the last 2 or 3 governments, there's been certain decisions taken for political reasons rather than for technical reasons. We're in a situation whereby no studies are able to show us how we're going to get clean, green, reliable electricity, so we need new options. And it's great to see that at last. It's a freedom to do the right thing, because we will eventually do the right thing, but sometimes only after we've tried everything else.
It takes us so long to get there. You said when we were prepping for this, you said the future isn't what it used to be.
Yeah,
which gosh. I love that kind of, would you call it a double negative? I don't know, but kind it's clever.
Yeah. But 10 years ago we knew where we were going to be today. We knew there was a trajectory. Can anybody say in 2026 that we know even what the next week is going to hold, never mind 5 to 10 years? But what we do know is between 1980 and say 2025, our electricity demand grew by fourfold. Which shouldn't be really much of a surprise because our population kind of doubled, right? And we became more industrial as well, which is great. But the projections that our electricity demand is going to increase by another 50% at least by the next 7 years. And it could double to almost triple by 2050 because of AI.
Are you factoring in data centres? Are we going to be building data centres again in Ireland?
Well, I think it's part of Ireland's industrial policy. Our strategy is to build data centres. And we have decided that 80% of the electricity for those data centres will be produced by renewables, which is great, you know. So let's do that. And then if you had some other clean, dispatchable source of electricity for when the wind wasn't blowing, the sun wasn't shining, could be nuclear, could be another source to keep the data centres, operating without having to put on their backup generators, which generally tend to be oil-based.
Right. So that was my next question. So we have a piece of legislation that bans nuclear.
Yes.
Yet we import electricity from systems where nuclear is part of the mix.
Yes.
So this is classic Ireland. Wasn't me. I didn't do it. So we're using nuclear. We are
Yes.
using electricity that's been generated from nuclear. What kind of percentage of our energy portfolio is being made up at the moment? Do you know? Or is it possible to tell?
The only interconnectors we have at the moment are to Britain.
Yeah.
Britain gets about 16% of its electricity from nuclear. We get 16% of our electricity from Britain. So you're looking at 2-3% kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then
But it's in there.
when we interconnect to France,
Yes.
France gets over 70% of its electricity from nuclear. And they're bigger interconnectors.
Yes.
So there's nothing sure about the electrons that come across from across the Celtic Sea will have been excited.
We're bypassing, we're kind of through chicanery, we're ignoring that piece of legislation.
Yeah, I suppose we are.
Or the spirit or the intent of that piece of legislation, at any rate.
Yeah, but see, the legislation was only put in my understanding, as a SOP.
Yes.
Because the people who proposed it, what they really wanted to do, and what initially was, they wanted to stop Irish people working in nuclear installations abroad.
Yeah.
But they couldn't do that because that was against one of the founding principles of the European Union.
Yeah.
The freedom of movement of people, and they wanted to stop the importation of nuclear generated electricity, and then that was a physical impossibility.
Yes.
So they settled then, well then just don't build it here in Ireland.
Yeah. So it's shall not provide for the use of nuclear fission for the generation of electricity.
Yeah. Okay. That's the 99 Act.
Yeah, but we're still consuming nuclear.
Yes, but interestingly, the Act, it's not a constitutional matter.
Is that kind of NIMBYism? Is that kind of international NIMBYism? Is it kind of, yeah, it's okay, we'll use the nuclear as long as you make it in your countries.
Yeah,
Not in my backyard.
Yeah, it doesn't reflect solid thinking.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. But what it does is a very clever piece of legislation in that it's only in one particular clause, so that clause can be taken out
without affecting the rest of the Act.
Simple legislatively,
yes.
Difficult politically maybe and socially,
yeah.
but it's very easy to do. It also doesn't prevent using fission for generation of heat. It also doesn't prevent you, we're checking this out, for having an offshore nuclear plant that isn't on the island of Ireland, and it doesn't stop you using fusion. Right? So it's very, very cleverly done. It was done under the control of Mary O'Rourke at the time.
So it appeased people, but there are plenty of ways around it.
If Ireland was going to go nuclear, we would need to change that law and the Planning and Development. There's a similar clause in the Planning and Development 2024 Bill and Act, which is yet to be enacted.
Okay, it's a bill.
Yeah, it
hasn't been passed.
It's been passed, but it hasn't yet been enacted.
Enacted, okay.
Yeah.
So the future is not what it used to be. I love that. So we are planning to upgrade infrastructure, upgrade the grid, improve our portfolio of energy, and we're planning to build data centres on this in Ireland.
Yes.
Again, that's part of the plan.
Yes. And we're planning to put more of our heat load into electricity. At the moment, it's gas and oil, a lot of it. So we're putting in heat pumps.
Yes.
And then obviously electric vehicles.
Yes.
And maybe electric trains and electric buses and that kind of stuff. So,
but in comparison to the amount of electricity that the data centres in Ireland use, like consumers, what are the proportions? Like electric cars, I mean, is that all a bit of a swizz?
Well,
are we obfuscating? It's like when people tell you, don't have long showers, but it's okay to eat a burger.
Yeah, like in fairness, in the utopian world, people would be able to take the shower that they wanted to take, and they'd be able to put on the washing. I was hearing on the radio today on the way out, oh, this is a good day for putting on the washing machine. I said, people, they're not going to be looking at the weather forecast. They don't want to do that. They want to do it when they need to do it. But the whole thing about data centres, I see it as being the canary in the coal mine, right? That data centres use about between 20 and 25% for electricity. It's not a huge amount.
Right.
Now, it could grow to be a big amount.
Okay.
But if we can't solve that energy, increase electricity demand, how are we going to be able to solve the extra heat and the extra electric vehicle load? But AI are the people.
Yeah, no, I know.
You know, they're providing the service for the people.
On our phones, on our laptops, in our hospitals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Diagnostic services, imaging. You know, okay, it's a picture of the cat, right? And I've got some great pictures of the cats. They're really good. But why can't we look at the cats? You know, if we had an electricity system that was reliable and affordable and clean, why can't we do everything?
Right.
You know?
So data centres at the moment are using about a third.
Well, no, it's around a quarter.
A quarter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but they may well go to a third by the next few years.
If we can create the infrastructure and get the power.
That's a big if. Yeah, because they're meant to be powered 80% by renewables.
Yes.
And we're not really able. Our renewables, the amount of electricity produced by renewables has kind of flatlined over the last 5 years.
What's blocking the renewables then? in 3 sentences.
Well, people.
People.
Yeah, location, location, location.
NIMBYism again. Back to the NIMBYs.
NIMBYism again, yeah.
Yeah.
And some people love the look of wind turbines, other people don't.
I love them.
Yeah. So, but it's the people that like it can say, yeah, it's great. But the people who don't like it are the ones that are going to go out and protest.
Yes.
And maybe what happened was, of course, you can't put a wind turbine, a massive wind turbine in somebody's back garden. Mm-hmm. So they produced guidelines about how far back from houses these wind turbines had to be.
Right.
They produced them back in 2006. Mm-hmm. But the wind turbines back then were little babies. Now they're massive. And they've been promising to review the guidelines since 2013.
Wow.
And they still haven't reviewed them because it's so difficult.
Right.
And I think the reason is that if they did review them to reasonable setback distances, because now the wind turbines are much larger, they wouldn't be able to implement. Wouldn't be enough land, enough space available to put in the amount of renewable energy that we need onshore.
So we have to go offshore.
So the secret is offshore.
But then what about the fish? It's okay for me to have my surf and turf, but I don't want to put an offshore wind farm in near my house in Dunleary.
Yeah, well, have a look at that and see, well, would offshore wind turbines actually damage the fish?
Well, exactly.
Or would they create new habitats around it?
Exactly.
Let's have a look at that. Let's do an environmental impact assessment, and let's do a little bit more than just scratching stuff. Let's go into it and have a look at it and make an informed decision. Now, that takes a long time.
Yeah.
The first time I was discussing new offshore wind was in 2005, and now we're 2026. So it's 21 years, and it's not one on the ground or on the sea.
So not one.
Well,
did we have one?
We had 7 small ones off the Arklow bank.
Yes.
They were small, but they're little baby ones.
Right.
But we hadn't had any since.
Are they operational?
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they produce about 20 megawatts.
Yeah.
Ireland's average demand is about 4,000 megawatts, so they're very, very minor.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's good to see them that they're there.
Yes.
So the plan now is to put in thousands of megawatts of offshore wind, and they hope to have the first one maybe kind of operating by 2030, 2031.
So this is happening?
Yeah, in theory. In theory.
Why did you make that face? Go on, tell me.
Yeah, because it's been going on for so
blockers?
long.
Yeah.
They're going on. Now, they had a certain bid price.
Yes.
They put it out to auction. This is great, right? Auction out to all the offshore wind turbine companies, how much will you charge for electricity? And they came in at a certain price.
Yeah.
And to my mind, it was too low.
Right.
So 4 companies won. One company has already pulled out because they reckon they paid the €30 million fine for pulling out. They reckon there was much less risk
Than what they would lose.
Than what they'd lose, yeah. So will the other ones go ahead at the same price? I don't know. They may or they may not. There's also huge delays in the planning system. And
Why did they? Okay, as somebody who's involved in the construction industry and has done an awful lot of bids, obviously the more information you have at the start when you're putting your bid together, the more accurate your price is going to be.
Yes.
Why were their prices so wildly inaccurate? Is it because things changed?
Well, I don't have inside information to know that they were wildly inaccurate, but I reckon it would have cost about €125 per megawatt hour to bid.
Yes.
And they actually bid in around 86, something like that. So it was significantly different.
They couldn't make a profit.
So
they underestimated it.
Well, you might take a risk. If you're an offshore wind energy company, you want to be developing offshore wind energy. So you may take a risk to say, well, I need to be in this market, I need to be taking things. And if I take a little bit of a hit here, at least I might win other contracts elsewhere, become a leader and be able to squeeze the market or whatever. They may also have thought that, well, because we need the energy, if they get in, well, then they may actually get a better price for it when they're actually in than what was agreed, because they've been able to make a reasoned case to the government, who are reasonable people, and they may well get a better price.
Negotiate then.
Yeah.
Once they're in.
And who knows if that's going to happen in the end anyway, because they haven't expended too much money. Environmental impact assessments are really expensive, but not as expensive as buying the wind turbines and putting them in, and they haven't bought them yet.
All right. So let's move on to that then, right? So what are the drawbacks? We all, a lot of people are proponents of renewables.
Yes.
We've discussed some of the barriers that are happening to the renewables. What are the drawbacks of renewables? We're all like, oh, wind, solar. But what are the things that we don't hear about? What are the negatives? What's on the minus side of the page?
Yeah. Well, I would include myself amongst those supporters of renewables. I've worked in offshore. I've worked in solar and I've worked in wind. Wind was a long time ago, solar was more recently. And I think the biggest issue with it is that it can do quite a lot. It can produce, when it's operating, it produces affordable and clean electricity. Mm-hmm. But it can't do everything. And the big drawback is that if you try to make it do everything, it ruins the reputation of what the thing is capable of.
So when you say everything, what are we expecting it to do?
Well, what do you want? Same as I want. You want clean, reliable, affordable electricity. And the reliable,
all day, every day?
All day, every day. When you hit the switch, you want the electricity to come on. And that's the level of service that we expect here.
Yeah.
When you go to other countries, sometimes you hit the switch and the electricity doesn't come on.
Now, can we put it in batteries if the wind blows on a Wednesday and it doesn't blow on a Thursday?
Of course you can.
And does that help us?
Oh, it helps. It helps put the price up as well, though.
Yes. Okay, so batteries are expensive.
They are expensive. The price of batteries is coming down.
Okay.
Right? So
who makes the batteries? In China?
I think a lot of things are made in China. Yeah. The wind turbines may be made in China as well. So I mean,
and the solar panels.
Yeah, but most of what I have on me is made in China. I'm not against things made in China. Yeah, they make nuclear reactors in China as well, by the way. But
little mini ones that we could ship over on the back of a.
Yeah, on the back of a truck.
Yeah.
Not make sure it doesn't fall off the truck. But the main drawback with renewables, as we have them at the moment, is that wind turbines only generate electricity when the wind is blowing, which thankfully is quite a lot in Ireland, but it's not all the time. Mm-hmm. And solar energy only delivers when it's bright. It delivers a lot more when it's sunny, but still produces a small amount when it's bright.
Now tell me about the turbine and the solar panel. This is a piece of metal, huge lump of metal and glass. What happens? What's the lifespan of that infrastructure? What's the life cycle of the kit?
Yeah, the life cycle of the kit. Okay, you can make a wind turbine last as long as you want, right? But the longer you want it to last, the more expensive it's going to be because the better materials you have to use. So you'll find
like anything.
Yeah. So they find that again the Goldilocks moment really with the wind turbines is to design them to last about 20 to 25 years. And after that, then you take down the blades and you put on, there's probably a new generation that might be more efficient, more effective, whatever kind of stuff. So 25 years. And the same with solar panels.
And do we recycle them?
In theory, there's recycling on the way.
Can't drop them off in Lidl.
No. And these are like, you can recycle the metal.
Yes.
And you can recycle all the rare earth metals and all that kind of stuff, the neodymium and all that kind of stuff in the generators. But the fiberglass is a little bit more difficult. They have made bridges from some of the blades, and they've made bicycle shelters and that kind of stuff. But you can't have, that's not enough. Like you can have pedestrian bridges, but you wouldn't have a truck going over them. So it's really difficult. But I believe there are processes out now. But
we don't have a plan for recycling the kit after 15, 20 years.
No, but there's an aspiration. Yeah, there's an aspiration, but it hasn't been, there's no path at the moment. Okay.
So when we do an offshore wind farm or a solar farm, there's an investment of, we need to buy the kit, we need to install it, we need to get the planning obviously first, we need to hire a load of people, contractors and engineers to actually put it in place and maintain it and mind it, and then we need to put the batteries in to harness the power on the windy days and on the sunny days and store them for us so we can press the button and have electricity all day every day like we want, like we've been in the manner to which we have become accustomed as a society.
But absolutely. But because the batteries are so expensive, if you wanted to store 2 weeks of electricity in a battery, it would put up the overall cost of electricity to the extent that you couldn't afford to buy it.
Right.
So then what you do is you put in the gas turbines as well for backup.
Okay.
That's where our 45% for electricity is from gas turbines.
And some of that natural gas is our own?
Yeah, some of it is, a very small amount of it from Corrub. But most of it, well, I think it's about 25%.
So we're importing half of it, or
yes, much more than half. And the Corrub field is due to decline, I think, by 2030.
Okay.
So and we've also
that's not a long-term viable option.
Well, you see, we've also outlawed the ability to prospect for more gas. So we won't get any more licenses to explore for more gas.
Another bit of legislation.
Yes, yeah, which has stopped us.
Holding us back.
Yeah, holding us back. Yeah. Yeah, so it means we're going to be relying more on imports.
And is that an environmental piece as well?
Yeah.
Well, 39% of our greenhouse gases come from animal agriculture.
But the gas, you see, comes from Britain and it comes across from Moffat and the Moffat interconnector there.
Yes.
It's a single point of failure, which has
failed
before.
So it's left us vulnerable.
We are vulnerable.
Our hospitals and our data centres.
And the other bad thing about gas, we've mentioned bad things about renewables. There's good things about renewables, there's good things about gas. One bad thing about gas is that it tends to set the price of electricity.
Yes.
Right? And as long as we have variable sources of electricity, we will need a solid gas backup. So the only way to get gas out of the equation setting the price is to put in something else that's clean and affordable and reliable. Nuclear energy could be that.
You, from talking to you, you're not an advocate of nuclear. You are an advocate of the Goldilocks energy portfolio.
Well, look,
that could be the book.
Yeah.
The Goldilocks energy portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a mix.
You don't get really ever to that, but you get close enough to what you want to do is solve the problem, right? And I believe we should put all our efforts into solving the problem. And once it's solved, then we start getting precious about which of the technologies we keep, right? But if you go about trying to do something which is adequate in some ways, but trying to make it be perfect, you're actually hitting your goals.
And it's a political football, in a way, that's kind of, because we're never going to please all of the different people.
Yeah, and I understand it is a difficult political thing, but which is more difficult? Explain to people that we're not going to meet our targets because we're making the wrong choices, or explain to people that these are the right choices and these are the reasons why it's in our interest to do it, and let the people who are not unintelligent figure it out
for themselves.
Figure it out for themselves and make a decision. Do you want to keep going the way we're going and look at prices the way we have already the most expensive electricity in Europe?
Yes.
We've some of the dirtiest electricity in Europe. It's still reliable because we have the interconnectors, but it's not dependable enough to be able to power our industrial strategy. For instance,
Pause. Some of the dirtiest electricity in Europe.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Okay.
We're clean and green.
No, yes, we are, of course. we're not.
Little green island.
Yeah, and EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland are blue in the face saying that we're going to need to improve.
Well, they just need to do better marketing, honestly.
They do. They produce really good reports.
I know, but nobody sees them because they don't do the marketing.
Well,
I'm just saying this to you guys now. Okay, give me a shout. They have the reports, they have the data, but the narrative is not getting out there into the public domain because they don't really use social media properly. Okay. Just saying, lads.
Oh, okay. Well, I think they would produce the reports for the politicians and for the government departments.
But the politicians won't swing until the public demands it, until the clamour.
Yeah, and the public doesn't realise. I fully accept that the public doesn't realise.
They need to get the public on board with the narrative, and then the public will make the politicians change their minds.
And one of the things I'm hopeful about is that the SEAI study is going to come out, and it will show undoubtedly that there's going to be a certain need for at least some nuclear by 2050. Maybe not 18%. It depends on how the study is set up and the assumptions that they make. But so long as you're going to need some, then that should give the impetus to say, let's change the law and be ready to act when we need to act.
Okay, so let's go back to dirty.
Okay.
Talk to me about dirty. We have some of the dirtiest electricity in the EU.
We have a higher percentage of gas that generates electricity in Ireland than most other countries. And gas, although people think it's clean, it's half as dirty as coal and maybe 3/4 as dirty as oil.
It was sold to us as clean, wasn't it?
Yes.
I remember this. I remember the adverts.
And it's
half
methane.
as dirty as coal.
Methane, carbon, CH4, 1 carbon, 4 hydrogens. Burn that, the hydrogen combines with oxygen to make water, the carbon combines with oxygen to make carbon dioxide.
And we get greenhouse gases.
Get greenhouse gases from it, yeah. And you get about half the amount of greenhouse gases from that as you do from getting energy from coal. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. So we need to get off gas for all these reasons, because it sets the price, because it has environmental damage, and because it is a security risk.
We're going to run out of our own reserves, and the interconnector is not reliable.
Is not reliable.
So there's loads of reasons why we need to get off gas.
Some people say
we need to taper off.
We need to, yeah, but the problem is that the renewables at the moment, solar is growing, it's growing really fast, but from a very small base.
Yes.
But the amount of energy that we've got from wind energy has kind of flattened out over the last 5 or 6 years. So then we need the next level, which is another 5 years away.
Why has it flattened out? Because we can't get the offshore wind farms built.
Yeah,
onshore ones.
It's because we haven't got the onshore wind farms built, and we won't take the next level until we start getting the offshore ones built, and that's maybe 5 years away. So people are saying maybe we should put in a liquefied natural gas and LNG terminal for security of supply.
Yeah.
And then instead of making that into an operational thing, we said, well, we'll build it so we don't, but we won't use it. We'll build it so it's not to be used, it's just for security. Right?
Okay.
And why have they come up with such a plan is because when they asked the consultants to have a look at our energy security issue and suggest solutions, they weren't allowed to consider nuclear. Look, nuclear doesn't solve everything, but we can't solve the problems we have without it. And the sooner we start getting realistic about this, the better. I'm hopeful that the studies will be able to show that there is a projected need for nuclear at some distant point, that would then encourage people to maybe change the law so we're ready to take action when it's needed. If we don't need it, fine. It's cheap to change the law.
We've talked about the pluses and minuses of renewables versus fossil fuels. Let's talk about we've talked about some of the pluses of nuclear. Let's talk about some of the minuses of nuclear. What are people afraid of?
Fear. Fear is
irrational,
is the
emotional.
Big thing. Yeah, and I don't think that's wrong. You know, I think it's we are irrational beings, and in lots of ways we're made this way. You know, we fear the dark. No reason to be more afraid of the dark than the bright. Just, you know, but that's what humans are. You know, so let's take account of that. And one of the ways is you've kind of faced your fear. You know, when you think of the boogeyman when you're a child, and then you grow up and you say, actually, there isn't a boogeyman.
It's our limbic system. It's our lizard brain, isn't it?
But if you say, for instance, I think one of the ways that you overcome fear is by knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? So if you had a look at it and said, okay, get somebody that you may trust to have a look and say, is it more dangerous to have nuclear or to not have it? Okay, if you don't have it, well then you have maybe less reliable electricity. The electricity will be more expensive, so you might have energy poverty, you might have dirtier electricity, and then you might have climate change. And then have a look at, well, what happens if you put in the nuclear and say, well, we've all these theoretical things that could happen, but then look, the best predictor of the future is the past. So let's see what has happened in the past 50, 60 years with nuclear energy and see, well, for instance, if people want to talk about dying, just say, well, how many people died from nuclear energy in the past? And you say, well, from radiation from it, there was maybe Chernobyl, 28-ish. It's a horrible number, but it's small compared to people who are dying without nuclear, who are dying because of climate change, because of energy poverty. If you take, people are afraid of the nuclear waste. It's the big question, what happens to the waste? What about the waste? And you say, well, let's have a look at it. What harm has the waste done so far? And you look at the entire history of waste from nuclear power plants, and it hasn't harmed, injured or killed anybody in over 60 years. Because they're small quantities, and they're extremely well managed, and it's extremely well manageable.
So this narrative that has created the fear, it's kind of, I mean, you're obviously a very rational person, and you like to examine data, and you like to create projections. You're an engineer, that's how your brain works. But the rest of us are kind of just, you know, bouncing around on an emotional trampoline all day, every day, responding to emotional stimuli and calling it rational, you know. If this irrational anxiety and fear about nuclear has grown up over the last, how many decades? 7 decades?
Yeah,
since
probably.
The 50s?
Well, no, I think anti-nuclearism started towards the end of the 60s.
Okay. So if this has happened, is there a conspiracy? Is it fossil fuel industry that are promoting this narrative? Or is it just something that happened due to a comedy of various different errors and ineptitude on the part of people who should know about this and should control the narrative?
Yeah, well, I don't know the answer to that. I have certain suspicions, but I wouldn't say what they are. I was at Council Point in 1980, and I wasn't against nuclear.
Yes.
And then I met a guy in 2005, and he worked in the nuclear industry. And the first thing I said to him, well, what about the waste?
Yeah.
I forgot my position.
Yeah.
I forgot, and I just absorbed, well, that's what you say when it comes to nuclear. What about the waste? There's no solution. And he said, well, actually have a look at it and see, is there a solution? And then I realised, actually there is a solution for the nuclear waste. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking, well, what about the other issues? I could think of other negative issues and say, well, actually, that's been solved as well, and that's been solved as well. And almost everything I had assumed about nuclear energy I found was not true. Or was not true to the extent that it was significant.
What is, in one sentence, how do we handle the waste? What do we do with it? Is the waste dangerous? What do we do with it? How do we destroy it? Can we recycle it? Do we have to store it?
It is extraordinary. Waste comes from fuel. The fuel, you can actually hold it in your hand. It's not that radioactive. Uranium is not terribly radioactive. Now, we wouldn't allow you to hold it in your hand because your skin might contaminate the fuel, so you'll have to wear gloves. It's not a danger to yourself. But when it comes out of the reactor, it's extremely radioactive and it's very hot. So what you do then is you put it into cooling ponds, like a large swimming pool, and leave it there for maybe 5 to 10 years until the heat has decayed and the radioactivity has decayed to kind of 1% of what it was when it came out of the reactor.
And where does the radioactivity seep into? Where does it go to?
Well, it goes into the water. You've got neutrons go into the water.
Yeah.
And there's 3 types of radioactivity, and
Okay.
another type is energy, and that goes into the water as well. So that water it heats up to a certain extent, but they're big pools and small quantities. You've got to remember the quantities are really small. So it's a tiny little fuel rod down the bottom of a big swimming pool, and the heat then just comes up, and it just evaporates. Evaporates. It's not, the pool wouldn't be hot. You could dive into that pool, you wouldn't be let. But you could dive into the pool, and it's only when you got maybe within 2 meters of the fuel rod would you be in any kind of radioactivity danger.
So France gets 70% of its electricity from nuclear. Mm-hmm. All right, so tell me, do they have these pools everywhere?
Yes. The pools are on site at the power stations. So when the fuel is used the first time, they take it out after 3 years and just transfer it and put it into the pool, where they leave it there until it's cool enough to be put into some other process.
And what do they look like, these pools?
Just like a big swimming pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they mightn't be as big as a 50-metre pool,
yeah,
but they're deeper. And they have this lovely blue glow off them because you can see kind of down the bottom. But they're really nice. You can walk around the outside. You don't have to have protective equipment on for your own protection. But we don't want anything falling and damaging the fuel, because remember, it's only waste if you waste it. Okay, the reason I say that is because when you use nuclear fuel in a power station the first time for 3 years, you're using about 1.5% of the available energy in it. So you don't really want to throw this away. So they're making reactors now which are going to be able to use that spent fuel and use that as base fuel for the next time. And certain type of reactor can get 60 times more energy out of it the next time than they got the first time.
Okay, so it can go into the pool for how long?
Say 10 years.
10 years, then we can take it out and use it again.
Yeah, well, take it out. Well, you'd have to process it. It's based on uranium, which is a heavy metal. Okay, and if you take a metal and a halide, say for instance, if you take say even sodium, which is a metal, and chlorine, put it together, sodium chloride, and it makes a salt. Right. So a metal and a halide makes a salt. So they can make a salt out of the uranium chloride, uranium fluoride, make a salt out of it. Then you can heat that salt up in a reactor so that it melts. It melts about 400 degrees. So it's designed to operate in the melted down conditions. So the concept of a nuclear meltdown goes. It operates at atmospheric pressure. So the concept of something starting exploding goes. Now you still have to make sure to keep the hot fuel away from water. So there's processes involved in that. So you transfer the heat from one salt to the other to another, and then you can store the hot water, or you can store the hot salt. So this is a way of getting 60 times more energy out of what we call waste. But it's only waste if we waste it. So don't bury it in the ground. Don't throw it into space, which they're not looking at doing anymore. That was just an idea to be explored, and it was dropped.
But Denis, do you know what? How much money do we spend in Ireland on importing energy from other countries? Do you have any idea what the approximate numbers would be?
I don't know, but I know our electricity is the most expensive in Europe.
Yeah.
And I know it would be even more expensive if we didn't have the interconnectors.
Right.
Because the reason that we import it is because their electricity is cheaper than ours.
Right.
And this is going back, if we go massively on the renewables, which is the current plan, and we're going to be an exporter, we can only export if we get our electricity price to be lower than both Britain and France.
Yeah.
And so far we're more expensive than Britain and France.
Okay.
I'm not looking like that equation is going to change anytime soon.
My point that I'm about to make, and this is me with my business person hat on, right? So instead of all that money flowing out of the country to buy electricity from other countries like France, Britain, we could create plants that process that waste here, create employment for our own people, generate revenues, generate tax, generate a kind of an energy boom here.
Absolutely.
Instead of the money flowing out, it stays here And it pays Irish people, it pays jobs, and it pays local Irish entrepreneurs, it pays the engineers.
Yeah, technically possible, politically and socially really, really difficult. Another good way of making money out of it is to use existing fossil fuel power stations that we have, the oil, the gas, the coal power stations, and put these small nuclear reactors on them and reuse the existing overhead transmission lines to get the power from the generating stations to the people.
Okay.
So you don't need the new transmission lines that they're putting all these billions and billions of euros into that
So
they
do
can't
we
get
need
built
new
anyway.
transmission lines for the renewables?
Oh yeah.
So we have to put in a whole raft of infrastructure in
Yes.
order to harness the energy out of the renewables.
Yes.
But for the nuclear, your point is that the infrastructure is already there, so we're just kind of amending it, we're building on it.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's actually...
Again, for the construction industry, this is great stuff. This is what we want to do.
They'd probably have more construction if they're building new pylons.
Well, that's true,
except
It would be
when was the last time we built pylons?
And also
So this is a technical thing that is not really, it's a theoretical thing that's really difficult to make happen. We've been trying to build the north-south interconnector for the last 20 years and there isn't a stick in the ground. Okay?
What's the barriers to that?
Again, people don't want it. And then they were looking at whether it should be overground or underground.
Yeah.
So they don't want to see the pylons going across the underground, and then
Yeah.
that's a different concept.
Yeah.
So if you got nuclear power plants put in existing fossil fuel stations and using existing transmission lines, lowering your cost, increasing your certainty of delivering a low carbon system, improving your reliability, and able to back it up, reducing the amount of renewables that you need. You still need a lot of renewables for the balance. But when you put in the renewable system, you have to put in the wind and the solar and the batteries and the interconnection and the transmission lines and the gas backup. When you add all those together, which is the thing that reduces your cost of electricity the most? And it's by using all the tools in the box in the right proportion.
The low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely. You know the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
let's go 80% or 70% with renewables and interconnection. And let's do the difficult 20% that's going to use 80% of the resources. Let's tackle that with nuclear. And then if you want to build that up a bit, for other reasons, you can do that. It's there once you've established that it's there. But you have the choice and you've got control rather than floating in the wind and, excuse the pun, and taking the most expensive, the dirtiest, and so far reliable but not guaranteed to be reliable electricity. Electricity that already cannot meet the needs of our industrial strategy.
Well, we also have to, and we're not going to segue into David McWilliams territory here, but we also need to create an environment where these innovative ideas stay in Ireland.
Yeah.
We need to create that.
Well, when you look at what happened
Petri dish for innovation.
Kind of when digital stopped, you know, they were a huge IT company, and Dell, the people that worked in it went off and they generate their own industries.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a really big growth area in Ireland. The pharmaceuticals as well. There's so many startups, particularly on the West Coast, from the Galway University and University of Limerick, and so many seed companies that start off with great ideas and doing great work. But I think we should open ourselves up to the possibility of more and not less. I think it's very damaging when you see everything to do with climate change, and it's all about the things you can't do. You know, you can't. Is this a good day for doing the washing? And I don't agree with that marketing. I think that's really poor. But is this a good day for thinking about other alternatives? Yeah, every day is a good day for that.
So, we've talked about the comparison: wind, solar, storage, the new grid, the new infrastructure we'd need versus nuclear. We've discussed that. The final one I have for you. So you're meeting Darragh O'Brien for a pint. Is he a mate of yours?
Don't know him.
He should be. He should be a mate of yours. He needs to get. He needs to get to know you, Denis. So you're meeting him. He's Minister for Climate, Energy and the Environment. What would you say to him?
Well, he has a very difficult job, and I'm glad I'm not doing it, because the skills needed to do his job are different to the skills that I have. But I think what would be very useful is if he was prepared himself to be more open with the people. As a politician, absolutely, he has to say we're going to meet our targets and all that kind of stuff and everything is rosy and vote for me again. But as a leader, I think he should be preparing the people that there are more difficult decisions coming down the road and that we perhaps won't do as well as we're being told that we're going to do on the alternatives. So prepare the people to make the difficult decisions. They're decisions that we assume are more difficult because we've never tried them. But they're decisions that have been taken in so many countries around the world. And Ireland can take those decisions as well. Because We mentioned France, nuclear. Spain, nuclear. When you go on holidays in Spain, go to Belgium, go to the Netherlands, America. You know, Poland is going nuclear, Estonia is going nuclear. Go to Sweden, go to Finland. These are intelligent, bright countries.
Visionary countries. They don't have the fear, or if they do have the fear, they feel the fear and do it anyway, like me going over a jump.
Well, they assess the fear and have a look at it and see, well, what's the fear about, and say, well, is that valid? Is it rational? Is it valid or not? Now, I don't expect everybody to come on board, but there has to be enough. And if you see that your cost of electricity is going to go down, and your liability is going to go up, and your industry is going to do better, and you're going to live longer, a better life with this than without it, they say, are we confident that we can manage it safely? Yes. Can it be safe enough? Absolutely. Yeah. And it's better if we think it's difficult doing nuclear. It's far more difficult to try and decarbonise without nuclear.
We're paying a huge amount of fines, aren't we, for not hitting our carbon targets? It's costing us a fortune.
That's 26 billion. 10 children's hospitals.
That hurts.
Yeah. And then there's the ongoing cost. Energy is a brilliant topic, but it's so important to us that we're able to grow our economies. Wouldn't it be dreadful if my children, coming back to them again, if they had to emigrate to work in a country that had affordable, reliable electricity, and they're working beside the nuclear power plant that we were afraid to put in here? You know? Nuclear isn't a panacea, it's not going to solve everything, but as I say, it's much easier to decarbonise with nuclear than without. When you have a fear, and rational fears are very human, so what you need to do is examine the facts. But you can put it in a way that, say, the cost of making those decisions is because, in a way, I don't like to use the word ignorant, but because of lack of knowledge. But the cost of gaining the knowledge is much less than the cost of that ignorance.